Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus, and I'm back in the basement. It's very exciting. I will let you in on a little secret. I am still technically in the basement, but I'm actually now filming in front of a green screen, and the background is like my old background that I am hopefully superimposing into where the green screen is. So it's kind of a long story, but basically the previous basement setup actually took up a really large amount of space because where I sat and my camera was had to be really far away from the items in the background to get them in frame. And we've had to shuffle some things around in the basement and unfortunately no longer have that amount of room. And I did try making it work in a smaller space and it just wasn't happening. So then had a brainwave and figured let's try a green screen. So anyway, here we are, but technically I'm still filming in the basement. Just now I'm just like a weirdo in front of a green screen. So anyway, hopefully it still works and hopefully it still looks as good as it did before. Let me know what you think. And I remember when I changed my filming location a while ago, there were a few people that said basically that they didn't like it. They think I should, have gone back to my previous filming location. I've had people message me, tell me they don't like my new name. I should change it back to the old one. So I'm sure I will get some comments from the people that don't like this background for whatever reason, but it's my channel. I get to do what I want with it, and feel free to go do something else with your time. As always, no one is forcing you to watch my videos. Like, I really don't know why that's so difficult for some people to grasp, but apparently it is. So yeah, if you really feel the need to tell me your thoughts, I can't really stop you, but I'm sure you have something better to do with your time, surely. Anyway, this is a reading wrap up, so I'm going to be talking about everything I read in the month of August. And yeah, I read several books and yeah, they were either good or great, so that's not a bad month. First up, I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by LaRocca. And thank you again to Steve over at Steve Talks Books and Stuff for sending this copy my way. That was really awesome of you. And I will leave his channel linked if you haven't already checked his channel out. So this book is about two female characters who meet on the internet in the year 2000, and they end up starting a relationship, and it's of a kind of submissive and dominant type relationship, and the things that the dominant partner asks of the submissive partner get increasingly extreme, and yeah, some messed up things happen. I know this one seems to have been somewhat divisive, but I fall in the I really liked it camp. This was a 4-star read for me. I found it very compelling, and I really enjoyed the dark directions that the story went to. I think my only major qualm with it is that I think things just seemed a bit rushed, like things seemed to happen very, very quickly, and I think it may have been a bit more believable if things had taken a bit more time to escalate. So, this is a really short book, so maybe it would have worked better as a longer piece of work. But I did still really enjoy it. It definitely made me a little uncomfortable at times for various reasons. And yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, I read The Pix by John Buell. And this, I think, originally came out in 1959. And it's kind of a noir detective story in a sense. And then there's also kind of an occult element as well. So, it kind of fits on like the fringes of horror. And this is one that I had specifically tracked down this cover edition of this book because I think it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, this was an interesting read. This one is about a call girl who is found dead, having jumped from the penthouse apartment of a building. But yeah, did she jump or was she pushed? And the story is told in alternating chapters. We're following the detective who's on the case in the present day, and we're following this call girl in the past. So we've got these past and present back and forth chapters, which worked really well for the story. I did think this had some really interesting elements to it. I enjoyed the characters. The character of the call girl specifically, Elizabeth Lucy, her characterization was, I think, really well done. It was very interesting to have this look at essentially a sex worker in the 1950s and written by a man, which could have all gone horribly wrong, let's face it. But I think this was really well done. It seemed really authentic, and it was actually a very poignant part of the story, learning about this character and this situation that she finds herself in. She's basically been, you know, hooked onto heroin specifically to kind of, you know, keep her chained to this line of work. And yeah, it just gets to the point where she just knows that she can't escape from it. And it was very sad. It was very poignant in that respect. And yeah, it felt like quite a sensitive look at that character. And then of course we've got this like murder mystery detective story aspect, which yeah, again was interesting. I think the story did get a little slow at times, and the ending, honestly, I did find a little confusing. Like, I could kind of fill in the blanks and figure out what might be happening, but it wasn't super clear. So because of the slow parts and because of the ending, I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars, but still one I'm glad I read. Next up, I read Bad Ronald by Jack Vance, and this was part of a group read over at One's channel, Plagued by Visions. And yeah, this one I kind of had a similar experience with this one to the pics, because there were definitely things I liked about it, but then there were some things that just didn't quite work for me, got a bit slow at times, a bit repetitive, but overall, you know, it was one I'm glad I read, and I rated it 3.5 stars. So this is about a teenage boy called Ronald. He's basically an incel, and he commits a crime, and he's very much a mother's boy, so he confesses to his mother what he did, and she decides, we're gonna put a plan into action so you don't get caught. And so she hides him in a room in the house, which they kind of make so you wouldn't know it was there. And yeah, I don't know how much more to say about the plot because I feel like that would get kind of spoilery pretty quickly. But yeah, the character of Ronald was a pretty interesting one to read about. He lives in his head quite a lot. He doesn't really understand, it seems, a lot of social norms. There's a bit of a kind of disconnect there. And his mother is insistent on him studying hard and becoming a doctor, whereas he just wants to, you know, draw and write fantasy stories and stuff. And he also eats a lot. Like, pretty much like 1/3 of the book is just dedicated to talk about food. And yeah, this one did have some dark and disturbing subject matter, but it wasn't like super graphic or prolonged, I would say. But yeah, the essence of the story is a somewhat sinister one, and it was interesting to see where that story went. Yeah, I did find it got a bit repetitive after a while, and it dragged a little in places, but it was still an interesting read. It's one I've been meaning to read for years, so it was good to have that opportunity to finally pick it up. Next up, I read Fashion Victims by R. St. Clair, our very own Regina over at Regina's Haunted Library, and she did send me this copy of the book, but she didn't, you know, make any kind of request for me to read it or review it. So I did that completely by choice, and I really enjoyed this one. And again, you know, my thoughts are my honest opinion of my reading experience of this book, regardless of the fact that we are friends. So yeah, I hope that that is clear. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is a thriller set in New York City in the fashion world. We're following a fashion designer called Len, and people around him are starting to get picked off. I really enjoyed the setting of this one. I thought the location of New York City was really great. It was very immersive and it felt very real and authentic. And the fashion world elements also felt, yeah, very authentic. I don't know if Regina has a background in the fashion industry or experience in it, but it definitely came across as very believable. I really enjoyed her writing. I enjoyed the characters, especially the character of Len. He had enough of a backstory for me to root for him, even though he's not like 100% a likable character. But, you know, I was kind of behind him and I wanted him to succeed. And yeah, there were some great twists and turns in the story that I wasn't expecting. It was, yeah, a really good thriller, one that I really enjoyed, and I rated it 4 stars. Next up, I read I Will Rot Without You by Danger Slater. This is one I did as a buddy read with my friend Emily, and we both really enjoyed it. She had read something of Danger Slater's before, but I had not. And this is bizarro horror, which is a subgenre that I haven't delved into too much, and I wasn't really sure if I was going to like this, but I really did. This is about a character who has been through a breakup with his girlfriend, and he is living alone, and there are these cockroaches that infest his apartment, and there's this mold growing in the bathroom, and yeah, these things kind of collide, and the character himself starts to experience some things, and yeah, as the title might suggest, he starts to physically fall apart. So this one definitely had the bizarro elements, which were really enjoyable. Some of them were amusing, some of them were messed up. There's definitely some gory moments in here too. And then there's also, like, the part that I wasn't really expecting was that it was really quite emotional, and the way that it explored relationships and breakups and love in general was, yeah, really, really interesting and really well done. And these things combined, like, I wouldn't have thought they would have worked together, but they absolutely did. So I really enjoyed this one. This was another 4-star read for me, and yeah, I would definitely read more by this author. Next up, I read Beautiful Grotesque, which is an anthology of 5 short stories edited by Sam Richard, and they are all on the theme of beautiful/grotesque. And yeah, this was excellent. I think each story interpreted that idea in a very different way, and each of them have, yeah, amazing talent for writing and storytelling in their own unique ways. Yeah, I thought each story here was excellent, and as a whole I rated this 4 stars. Then I read Small World by Tabitha King, and this was a buddy read with the lovely one over at Played by Visions, getting a lot of plugs in this video. And yeah, we had a similar experience with this. I think we both rated it around 3 stars. It was a 3-star for me. It was good, but not great, unfortunately. The concept is very interesting. It is about this contraption that can minimize things and people, and one thing leads to another, and basically this wealthy kind of bored and bitchy socialite teams up with this nerdy dude who has created the minimizer, and they basically minimize and kidnap this journalist and she is then kept in a miniature doll's house version of the White House, which this socialite lady happens to own, because it's kind of a long story to go into the details. But anyway, that's the general gist of it. And I think the thing with this one is that concept was great, and the times when it got a bit weird and it leaned into the more pulpy nature of the story was when it shone. But other than that, it just kind of got a bit bogged down in some of the like day-to-day stuff of these various characters, and yeah, at those points it was just a bit boring to get through. So I wish it had leaned more into the trashiness, because I think that would have been like a really fun read, but we just get kind of glimmers of it, so that was a bit of a shame. I feel like the concept, you would kind of have to either go one way and yeah, lean into the trashy side of things, or you have to go like completely the other way and lean into like a very serious story instead. But this was just kind of a mixture of both, and it didn't really work. So still glad I gave it a go, and yeah, it was fun to chat with Juan about it as we were reading it. So yeah, this was 3 stars. And then last up I read Halo by Chet, and this was for the From Hell book club, which is hosted by Kelly over at Kelly Hooked on Books. Yeah, and this is one I've been wanting to read, so yeah, this was the perfect opportunity to do so. And this is about a teenage boy called Billy Halo, who is very handsome, he's very popular at school, he's like the star football player on the team, and is, you know, does very well in class also. But he's also like probably a sociopath, maybe a psychopath. He gets off on, yeah, causing harm to others. There is some animal cruelty in here, and yeah, he definitely has some violent urges, and as the story goes on, he does give in to these urges in various instances. So I think the overall story idea was really good, really interesting. I think some of the characters were well written, and I think the scenes where we get these disturbing things play out, I thought they were all really well done and very effective. But I think, yeah, what let this one down a bit for me was it did feel a bit slow at times, and I feel like some of the characters felt very flat, unfortunately, and so I both didn't really like get invested in them as characters, and also just reading about them, you know, their dialogue felt a bit kind of stiff and clunky at times. But it was still a good read. I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars. And I did want to mention, so the picture here is of the original paperback, which I do not have a copy of, unfortunately. It's a super cool cover, but it is a bit pricey to track down. So I decided to go with the Kindle version, which is this picture, which is just like, honestly, one of the worst book covers I have ever seen. And it was just funny because I bought this a while ago, and so I was at my desk, I'd bought it, you know, on my computer, and my husband came in, and like I realised I had got this picture on the screen, and so I was just like, let me explain. And so like I insisted on like going through the entire backstory of like the book and what the original cover looked like, and the reason why I couldn't get the original book and had to buy the Kindle version instead, and yada yada. So yeah, it was just very amusing. But anyway, yeah, that wraps up my reading month of August, so not a bad month overall. Let me know if you read any of these, I would love to hear what you thought. Thank you ever so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.